G'day everyone, it's Ollie and Brody here from BMobile Physio. We are the experts when it comes to exercise for people over 55, and we are joining you live today for a bit of a first here on YouTube. We're going to do a summary of what we call the BMobile Show, which is a show that we do every week for our online members. So this is the show that we gave to them last week. We're going to give you a bit of a taster for the sort of thing that we delve into.
So our online members are people all around the world over 55 who are exercising with BMobile via the power of the internet. So we have our online exercise programs, which these members are paying for, and it's part of our awesome community that are getting fit and strong from home. And as Ollie was just saying, each week we do a live show exclusively to the members within our private Facebook group, where we, answer questions and talk about educational topics to help them in their exercise and fitness journey. And so today for YouTube, we're doing a little to our more wider public audience, a bit of a sample of what sort of information you get.
Yeah, that's right, Brody. And last week, Jack and I went on live about this time. Oh no, this was on Friday.
Yeah.
So yeah, we answered some questions. So if you have a question, maybe it's related to the topic that we discussed today, or something different altogether, feel free to leave it in the comments or send it through in some other way. Maybe our email is good, info@bmobilephysio.com.au, and we can add that into the list of things that we can delve into next time we do a Q&A. All right, so what we are discussing today is something that is very pertinent not only to people over 55, but people more generally, and that's back pain, okay? Now, I think whenever you experience an onset of back pain, the hardest part is that initial panic and think, like this is terrible. Hopefully this isn't going to be forever. How long is it going to last? You start to really ask those hard-hitting questions. So hopefully if you are watching on today, you'll leave today's session with a little bit of a clarity, I guess, around what you should be doing whenever you first feel that onset of pain. But Brody, let's start with a few of the statistics around back pain. I think.
So low back pain is extremely common. It's, I believe, the leading cause of disability worldwide. That can vary depending on exactly how it's measured, but it causes some of the most days of missed work, lost productivity, lost GDP and things from people being out of the workforce, et cetera, et cetera. It just has one of the biggest impacts on people's lives. Around 90% of people will experience some significant lower back pain at some point in their lives. So extremely, extremely common. Almost all of us get it.
Yeah. And the vast, vast majority of low back pain is what we call non-specific low back pain. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't know what it is. It means that we can't isolate the symptoms down to one specific source or structure.
Yeah. So we can't say it's exactly this muscle or it's this joint or it's this part of your lower back. All of that stuff gets grouped together, and we suspect this low back pain, and the research indicates that it's related to the muscles, the joints, the tendons, the ligaments, and that lower back in general. But no clinical test or even imaging like MRI can specifically say it's that's the problem, it's that. So that's why it gets lumped into this non-specific low back pain, which is 95 to 99% of low back pain, depending on which statistics you look at.
Now, let's give you some good news, a bit of hope whenever you experience back pain. The vast majority of cases, 80%, do get better, significantly better within 6 weeks. And a lot of people see a full resolution within that time period.
And 6 weeks might seem like a long time, but even within that, often it's the first few days to a week or two where there's a lot of improvement, and then a bit more gradual improvement, so that by 6 weeks, people are getting back to being mostly pain-free. That's about 80% of the time. The other 20% can develop more persistent long-term pain that may last 12 weeks or more. So we know that is the case. But yeah, good news, if you're in that 80%, you're going to be back to normal usually within 6 weeks.
Okay, so we know 90% of people experience at some point in their lives, which means that you sitting watching at home probably have experienced it before. So think about a time when you've felt some back pain. Maybe you were lifting something awkwardly, or maybe you were exercising, you were getting out of the car. Maybe it just came out of the blue. There was no rhyme or reason to it at all. And think about how it felt at that time, because for me, Brody, it seemed, I feel a real sense of panic, like, God, here we go again. So we're going to talk about what you should do. So the first step, I think, is always to just take a moment to pause and just assess, take a few deep breaths and see how bad it really is.
Yeah, because often it can feel quite scary initially, but sometimes that really acute pain can go within seconds to minutes.
Yep.
And as you sort of take stock of the situation, you often find it might not be as bad as you think. So yeah, rather than panicking, take a few breaths, sort of just calm yourself for a moment, and then you can assess the situation. Now, Ollie, what can people do to kind of assess how their body is?
Well, I always like to, Brody, go through just some gentle movement. So after I've taken a few deep breaths, I might start just by checking. I might do some little gentle bending over and just see how my symptoms respond. Might try leaning back or down to the sides, just going through some very basic movements and seeing how the symptoms respond. Because as Brody said, sometimes you can overreact and think, well, this is really, really bad, but the symptoms resolve quite quickly.
Yeah, and if you're having an acute low back pain episode, we're not expecting you to be able to do those movements fully, right? Especially that leaning forward one. A lot of people are going to get down a little bit and realize their body really doesn't want to go much further, or that pain increases. That's okay in this situation. We're just sort of seeing that, okay, my back has a bit of movement. I am okay. There's some range of movement that I can still do, although the body might not want to go all that much further. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. And one thing that we counsel our members on a lot is if you're exercising, for example, obviously we're big on exercise. If you're exercising and you feel some back pain, it's good to find ways that you can continue your session. So that's the first step, is to just assess where you're at. You might be able to carry on whatever you're doing, but you just got to work out where you're at. Okay, so once you've got a bit of a gauge, you've taken some deep breaths, maybe done some gentle movements, you've hopefully worked out whether or not you can proceed with whatever you're doing. We want to be clear that sometimes, and I'm speaking from experience here too, it's okay to just call it a day on your exercise session if that's what you're doing. Because like it's just no point carrying on if it's really troublesome and you're in a lot of discomfort.
And so that's just going to come from that initial triage. And there's no exact right or wrong way to do this or check boxes to tick off. But as we said, you're just going to assess how you feel and decide, is this something more on the milder side where you're going to be okay to continue moving and exercise? Or is this a bit more significant and it's time to stop? Or in the very, very rare worst case scenarios, do you need more urgent medical attention, which is extremely rare, but obviously can sometimes happen. Yeah,
so maybe we'll talk about that now, Brody. Yeah. What are the signs that you might need some more medical attention?
Yeah, so firstly, if you're like just the pain itself can be a sign. If you try and take a few deep breaths, take stock of the situation, but you are still in severe 8, 9, 10 out of 10 pain, you're on the verge of screaming in tears, like obviously that pain itself is enough of an indication that you may need to get something, that you may need further medical attention. If you have any notable change immediately in sort of muscle strength, like suddenly one of your leg or both of your legs are numb or weak or something like that, that might be a sign that you need more urgent attention.
And if you may not notice this straight away, of course, these symptoms can develop, but if you have changes to your bladder or bowel function, those sorts of more serious changes are definitely a sign that you should seek medical care. But once again, those cases, those symptoms are very, very rare. Right, so you've worked out sort of where you're at. You've decided whether you can carry on with your exercise, whatever you're doing. And if you can, you may be reducing the weights that you're using for your exercise. You are doing smaller movements, perhaps trying different exercises. But the next few days are really important as well, because you're in a lot of discomfort. You're trying to work out what you can do. You need to tie your shoelaces. You've got to work out ways to do that. But we want to carry on those sorts of normal activities that we would normally do as best as we can, because we know that people who remain active tend to have better outcomes in terms of the likelihood that the pain lasts for a longer period of time. Okay, so we would highly recommend avoiding bed rest for prolonged periods. We know from the science that that's not a good idea. You're much better off to keep moving as much as you can. But that said, when you're in a lot of pain, particularly in your back, it's very fatiguing. And if you need to take some time just to find a comfortable position and relax and, gather yourself a little bit, that's absolutely fine.
So overall, the guidance is to try and continue living life as normally as possible. That includes chores and household activities, going to work, and any other exercise you'd normally do. For all of those normal life activities, the goal is to do as much as you can tolerate and just trying to live that life as normally as possible, rather than, as Ollie said, just going, no, my back's too sore, I'm going to get in bed and do absolutely nothing. So, of course, with all of those activities, you may need to modify, you may need to do less, as Ollie was saying, you may need to stop and have more frequent rests and things, but the goal is to do as much of your normal stuff as you can, even putting up with the pain a little bit doing those activities.
Yeah, and good to remember that pain, even severe levels of pain sometimes, it's not a sign of the damage or level of damage that you've got. It's really just a sign of sensitivity. Now, speaking of sensitivity, it's going to be important for you to manage your symptoms. So whatever ways that you like to do that, whether that's using a heat pack or finding a comfortable position, for example, some of those positions we showed before can sometimes be relieving for people. Or you might speak to your pharmacist or your doctor about using oral analgesics like, paracetamol, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, those sorts of things. Okay, so if you're watching on and you have a question or you'd like to comment on something, do let us know. We have the comments up here, so we can chat to you there. But
what about movements or exercises, Ollie? Because a lot of people might be thinking, what's the best exercise I can do when I have an acute episode of low back pain? The truth is there is no one best exercise that you can do, but we think any movement you can tolerate is going to be a good idea. I'll often recommend to people walking as one of the simple things. I'll say try and do lots of 5 to 10 minute walks throughout the day. Every hour or two, do a 5 or 10 minute walk. Something like that can be really simple. But generally just any movement is going to be helpful. And there are some specific ones you can try.
Yeah, but yeah, to that point, Brody, there's no lowest level. You could literally just do some marching in the chair, or you could do some reaching up in the chair. It doesn't have to be anything too vigorous or specific or special. But in terms of positions, you can try things like, I don't know whether you can see me here, but you might try lying on your stomach, okay, and doing a bit of arching like this and seeing if that helps. Or the opposite, you might just lie on your back and lift your knees up into that sort of position, and just playing around with different positions that might provide you with some relief. But any sort of exercise is going to be helpful. It's just a matter of finding something that you can handle in those early stages.
And while things are quite sore, often it's going to be about doing lots of little gentle movements, but really frequently. I often tell people try and do as much as you can. If you find sitting in the chair and just rotating side to side like this is feeling good and feeling helpful, try and do hundreds throughout the day. Like lots and lots of little snippets of movement is often one of the best things in those first few days.
Yeah. Rather than just going to bend over and realizing it hurts a lot and then just wiping out exercise entirely. I often tell people, Brody, because it can be really troublesome when you've got a lot of back pain, give yourself a little mantra to keep yourself in a positive frame of mind, because that is really helpful. So I like to have a mantra or a little slogan of something like, motion is lotion. So whenever you're feeling a lot of pain, you don't feel like doing anything, remind yourself that moving can actually help you to relieve your symptoms, and certainly help to relieve some of those sensations of stiffness as well.
Yeah. Or another one we often tell people is that hurt does not equal harm. That's a deeper and wider conversation than we're going to have today, understanding pain and things. But just the dot point to remember for today is that, especially with things like lower back pain, while the pain can feel very severe and very high, often there is very little or no actual damage, actual harm to the body. So how much pain we feel versus how much damage we have is not an even one-to-one relationship. And for lots of things, especially acute things like this, it can feel much worse than it actually is. So as I said, deeper conversation to be had around that. But just for today, remember, hurt does not always equal harm. And just because it's sore doesn't mean moving and being active is going to be damaging for you.
Yeah, definitely. And on the topic of exercise, that's something we talk about a lot. You can start to test going back to your normal exercise routine whilst you're still in pain, and just seeing how you respond. Of course, if it's really increasing your symptoms, then perhaps you're not quite ready yet, and you just need to carry on doing some of that more gentle exercise, like you're walking and things like that. But yeah, perhaps let's wrap up with some takeaways. Hopefully you can go away with. So the first thing, whenever you experience that onset of back pain, what can you do? Take stock. You're going to do some gentle movements, some deep breathing, and just assess the situation, first of all, without panicking or catastrophizing.
The second thing is immediately and in the coming few days, just looking out for those more significant symptoms that are rare but can happen. So significant weakness, numbness in the legs, pins and needles in the groin, changes to bowel and bladder function, anything like that that just seems fishy is a good sign to get some medical investigation done. But those things are rare, but it's good to just know that they're there and to be mindful of them.
Yep. And step number 3, of course, is to manage your symptoms in whatever way you see fit. So whether using heat packs and gentle exercise or finding comfortable positions, just do your best to get through those days with the knowledge that in all likelihood, you're going to get better very quickly.
And we are intentionally being a little bit vague about that because there is no one best thing you must do. It's not like you must use heat or you must do this exercise. Different things work for different people. So just try a few things and see what works for you.
Yeah.
The fourth and final takeaway is to gradually return to your normal exercise routine when you can. You don't have to wait until you're completely pain-free. Once you start feeling better, try and get back into the normal exercise routine. The sooner you do that, generally, the quicker and better you will recover.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that was a good little one, 15 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed it and you took something away from it. As I said, if you have any questions that you would like some general advice around, obviously we can't give you specific advice for your question. But yeah, do drop it in the comments below this video and hopefully we can get to it next week.
And as always, check out our YouTube page for lots of information, all things really exercise, health and fitness for over 55s. And we look forward to seeing you in a future live video.
Absolutely. All right. See you later, everyone.